Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas. Sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you to grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. I'm in Burrowang in New South Wales in Australia, and today I'm talking with a fellow Australian dentist, Dr. Grace Shah, who's up in Brisbane. Same day, same afternoon. She's only an hour behind. Dr. Grace, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast. So good to have you. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. Now, Grace, you and I haven't met, but we've spoken a number of times over the last couple of years.
Thanks for having me, David.
When you contacted me, you were about to launch yourself as an advisor or a coach or a consultant for dentists, and you wanted to work out how to craft your speaking career. And so I put you in touch with the Queensland branch of the Professional Speakers Australia, the PSA, and that's been really good for you. But let's start by winding the clock back, because you do look like you're not even old enough to be a dentist, but you've been a dentist for 16 years. So let's talk about, how did you come to go from school to dentistry? What were your choices? Why did you choose it? Did you choose it? Was it chosen for you? And then your journey through dentistry to where you are today, still on maternity leave with a 9-month-old and two careers, one as a practicing dentist and one as an emerging speaker for and coach for dentists in dentistry. So, Grace, over to you. Let's begin. Let's wind back to once upon a time and start with how did you end up going to dental school?
Yeah, thank you for asking. This is a question I enjoy sharing. So, as a Asian person in Australia, we are high achievers and we try to fulfill our parents' hope and dream. And I was actually a really good child. I did that quite well. So I was really grateful for my parents for moving to Australia. Despite not being able to communicate freely in English and having to give up their life overseas. So I actually worked really hard and I got top of my year in high school. So I did have all the different choices to me. And because I grew up with a father who's a dentist, healthcare was something that I've always considered. Also because I'm a Christian, so I believe, helping people, like healthcare is very much about caring for people. But why I chose dentistry was I thought it was the easiest way to actually help people and volunteer regardless of their circumstances or their race or gender or socioeconomic circumstances, because I grew up seeing all these people volunteering overseas as missionaries. And everyone's got teeth. Everyone needs to see a dentist, hopefully twice a year. So that's why.
Interestingly, I was talking yesterday with a dentist from New York, and he said when he went to dental school, he had no family connection above him, and he went because he thought a medical career was what was expected of him, being smart. But when he got to dental school at New York University, more than half of the students in his year had parents who were dentists. So So that was interesting. The other thing which was interesting was that the lady that he married became a doctor, and between them, their 4 children, none of them are in a medical career.
Yeah, I think my father being a dentist, they didn't push me to become a dentist, but I think I knew what the job entailed, and I grew up, sitting in the back of a dental surgery, so I knew I didn't not like it. And I like the aspect of being able to meet people and journey through them in life. So a journey with them, through different
So
stages of their
you
life,
said your
and
parents
see
moved
people come
from
back regularly. So I really like that
Asia,
aspect of
from
journey in
Taiwan
dentistry.
to Australia.
Yes. He still works in Taiwan. So it was really tough for them. My dad would actually like work
Oh,
and then come and visit regularly, and my mum was here as a single mum, sort of raising me and my sister. A lot of Asian families actually go through that, so I think that's why you sort of be grateful and you work hard, because they've worked very hard to bring us over and give us the opportunities that we have.
once you graduated, got your piece of paper, how did you go then entering the workforce?
Yeah, so being an overachiever, goody two shoes, I also that's my year, top of my year in Melbourne Uni, and I think a few years out from graduating, then you realize no one gives you a certificate anymore for being a good general dentist. So then, having grown up, always having that achiever's mindset, and what's the next step and the next step, I never actually stopped to think, hang on, why am I doing what I'm doing? You're just like, okay, so what's the next step now? No one can award me anymore. So I either open a practice, or I go back to uni and study more, or I become an academic. So I started actually, working 1 day a week at the uni to try that out. And I was thinking about specializing. But actually, that's when my research supervisor from Melbourne Uni, who I was really close to and really admired, he actually passed away and was found in the postgraduate room, passed away, died of natural causes on the weekend. And I think that was a wake up call for me to actually really consider, like, why I'm making the choices I'm making, and what was the purpose of me being a dentist. And that's when I actually remembered how I always told people that volunteering was a very big part of that. And I had volunteered a lot in different things in Australia, including dentistry, but I hadn't actually gone to that overseas trip. So that was actually when I put my name down with an organization that was reputable, who I knew friends had gone overseas with, and they allocated me to a mental health team in China. So I was actually seeing mental health dental patients, as well as translating lectures for psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers.
So as a volunteer and working for someone else, did it ever cross your mind to become a practice owner?
So when I was on that trip, it was just a short term, a few weeks trip, but I think that trip opened my mind that I had a lot of transferable skills, because on that trip I did a lot of public speaking, both to the media as well as translating lectures, and I realized I was limiting myself in what I thought I was good at, or what my chosen paths would be. So I realized when I came back, I could try different things if I was feeling a bit burnt out and wasn't sure of where I was going, or feeling like I've hit a glass ceiling. So I started doing a lot of different courses, business courses, property development courses. I did end up opening a practice with my husband at the time, who was an allied health professional. And I think working on that gave me the experience of having to own a practice. And I realized it probably wasn't my, passion and what I wanted to do on top of an existing practice already. So I actually tried my hands at doing property investment and development on the side of general dentistry, and I really enjoyed that. But that was actually where I think we chatted a bit more before about my journey of going into public speaking. So how I wanted to do that was because of my story. So I ended up being traveling in very different paths to my husband at the time, until we actually didn't know why we were doing what we were doing anymore. Like, we weren't on the same page, and he committed me to a mental hospital and said that I had high functioning bipolar. I ended up having to go through quite a big process to clear my name, to establish with the dental board, as well as through mental health tribunal, that I didn't have anything diagnosable, so that I could practice without conditions again. And why I do the public speaking now is actually to help share my experience, because I know a lot of people go through periods of struggle or challenges in their life, but how do you go from that and have a different perspective and be grateful for your experiences? And how can I use my experiences to help others and inspire others? I think it was, definitely, very scary, and especially because when I've volunteered overseas in mental hospitals, you have this high and mighty view of yourself as a health professional from a Western world going elsewhere to help. And, I realized, a lot of reflection afterwards, that I was actually quite egotistical, and I thought that I was helping people, but actually you always learn a lot more about yourself when you're volunteering. And I learned a lot when I was actually living in the psych ward, what it's like to be in the mental health system. So it was, I think, also a blessing to actually have had an experience on both sides of the mental hospital and see the system. And actually that helps you reflect on yourself a lot more. And like I definitely, was thinking that our system was a lot, better and flawless, and we got, all our mental health stuff down pat in the Western world, because it's such a issue that people talk about. But obviously we still have issues in the system that needs to be improved, and that's sort of part of what I hope I could help contribute to as well.
You must have been feeling pretty well on your own. How did you get yourself out of that situation and then back on your feet, and then get yourself back practicing again with all those things that you mentioned in terms of having to convince the dental council, the dental board, that you were sane and capable of being a dentist? How was that process for you, and how did you go about getting back on your feet, and how long did that take you to do that?
I think when I look back, I was really grateful that I had the experience of volunteering overseas in the mental hospitals, because that meant I didn't have like this fear of being around people who had mental health issues. I had a special interest actually in seeing people with special needs or mental health issues since I came back from that volunteering trip. And I actually did can we say, quite well in the mental hospital, because I was actually helping other women, like by sharing my experiences and talking to them and actually listening to them. Some of them decided they didn't want to kill themselves, or they actually, became really good friends with me, and they defended me when I was going through, tough times. And the hospital chaplain actually came and went, "Oh, do you want to do a chaplaincy course? You seem to be quite good at this, counseling patients thing." So I think it actually made me realize everything's happened for a purpose, because, when I thought of overseas volunteering, I never thought to apply for a mental health trip. That was just what they were really looking for, that I happened to be able to fulfill two roles on that particular group. So I felt like I was, God had prepared me for that moment. And so I think that gave me hope when I was in the hospital, that everything was happening for a reason. And I was really grateful for friends who actually came to visit me in hospital or spoke to me during that time, because people that have known me for a long time can reassure me that, yes, you're still actually the same person that we know. And like, if someone actually took time to listen to why I was behaving the way I was, or the conflicts, they could actually understand why, things have happened. But the issue was the one psychiatrist who didn't actually listen to my story. And it's very easy to tick boxes on the DSM-5 to say someone is high functioning bipolar. If you talk fast and you think highly of yourself, you're a bit elevated, which, as someone who ducks both high school and uni, I guess that's an easy box to tick, that I'm slightly elevated when they ask, have you achieved a lot in your life, sort of thing. So yeah, I think having people to reassure me, and then having nurses and other staff and checks and balances in place. So the nurses who actually observed me and social workers realized very quickly that I was actually, I didn't really belong there. So they actually got patient advocates in to help me, to guide me through the process of mental health tribunal, which is quite a, very big process, very difficult. So yeah, lots of people along the way that I'm grateful for. And afterwards, having to go through another process with the dental board, it was actually very educational as well. But yeah, I'm grateful for the Dental Association. So the ADAQ up here, they actually have a staff team on an advisory team, and they actually help guide me through that dental board process, which sort of started off without them being involved, but they were actually able to shorten the time and help me with the expectations. And that's why I actually now serve on the ADAQ board, because I realized, how valuable my membership was. And I'm very grateful for the staff there who actually helped me through that. But a lot of it, is about having the mindset of gratitude and seeing opportunities in the challenges. And there were a lot of other things that happened in my life during that time that reassured me that, I was sane, and things that were happening for me were for a greater purpose. Like 3 months after I was released from the psych ward, I actually ended up being invited on a trip through Virgin Unite to South Africa. So I was on a trip, and I got to meet Richard Branson, go on safaris with him, meet Nelson Mandela's wife. And I think when I'm among those types of people who are entrepreneurial and think outside the box, I realized on that trip that maybe I wasn't the crazy one. Maybe I was just around people who didn't have that growth mindset and wanted to limit me in my path. And I needed to actually work on myself and who I'm around, and elevate my circles. The South Africa trip was actually my last overseas trip before COVID hit. And then, during COVID, I was going through both, finishing off with the dental board process, as well as trying to look for a new job. I started in some jobs, and then they had to shut down because they didn't have enough masks to, practice. I actually ended up trying a lot of different interesting things. So I ended up doing some extras acting. I think, it opened my eyes up to a whole different world and different perspective on not limiting myself as well. But through it all, I think I can now look back and think it's all actually for the good. And it was very timely that I was too busy dealing with divorce and the dental board process to actually be too concerned about the dental work and, battling to go back into practice. I was in Brisbane from 2013. So, I had been here for a while. But the mental health system, I was not exposed to that and the processes of that at all before this. And it was an educational sort of experience for me. And there's some good in having to go through the process with the dental board. It was very stressful, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but I had to go see counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists. And because, I had to go to so many sessions, you learn a lot from all of those sessions as well. You learn a lot about yourself. You do a lot of self-reflection. It's also good to have reassurance from many different professionals that, I was okay.
One of those purposes was that now with this experience, you can help dentists and health professionals to identify the warning signs so they avoid going to the place where you were, and they can fix either if they can on their own or with assistance, and avoid that going down to, as I call it, going down that rabbit burrow and not being able to get out of it because of not really knowing what's going on. So how did you then transition into this? This is now my calling to help others. You obviously realize that some of this was your personal situation, your relationship, but obviously some is also the feeling of overwhelm of, I'm a dentist. What am I actually meant to be doing, and what am I actually meant to be purveying to the public as to what I am? There's quite a conflict there, just in that, in every dentist's mind, whether they're got other issues as well. It's like, what does the public expect of me, and what am I meant to do, and why should I be doing that? So let's talk about that and how you've identified this as an opportunity for you to help dentists and health professionals.
I think I didn't particularly pursue this path. A lot of the best things that have happened in life, I guess, for me, have happened. And then you sort of go, how do I find the silver linings in this? Or, not to limit myself. I think having that mindset to look at everything as an opportunity and have hope.
So, Grace, having been through all that yourself, and what a journey it has been, and come out the other side, what made you decide then that this was then an opportunity for you as a giving person to help and assist other dentists who you thought or you saw were going through the same sort of situation, but without being able to find the answers, because you really only found the answers yourself? So it's very benevolent of you to identify that you had a gift then to help other dentists. What made you make that decision?
So I think it wasn't actually an intentional process. When I actually, wrapped up all the process with the dental board and through my divorce, I ended up needing to tell a lot of people about what happened to me, because I then, met my now husband, the good one. And and then when I have to share with friends and people who have known me for a long time what has happened, I found that people really actually resonated with my story, and they react in different ways. And I found that a lot of people actually did suffer from a lot of challenges, but they might not feel comfortable to share until they realize that my life wasn't actually perfect, and that I've gone through challenges and I get it. So I found that people really resonated with that, and I was thinking about how to use my experiences for good, because a lot of people, said, "Oh, go on Today Tonight and expose them, or let's sue them," and I didn't think those ways were things that were a positive response to a negative situation. So through all of it, a lot of people sort of said, "Oh, you should write a book. Your story is actually, really amazing. The highs and the lows, very exciting." So I thought, okay, maybe writing a book might be a thing I could do. And then people said, "Oh, you should make a movie out of it." So I ended up stumbling into extras acting. And then I realized, to make a movie out of something, you need to write a book first. So then it was back to the writing a book. I was considering writing a book, and I signed up to like a self-publishing sort of guided coaching package. And when I shared on social media that I was writing a book about how to journey from burnout to abundance and sharing my story, I started getting asked to speak, and people really, resonated with that topic of burnout, because burnout was actually defined by the WHO in 2019. Before that, it was a much used word, but it wasn't actually people didn't actually know what they were talking about. And maybe if the definition came out earlier, I wouldn't have gone through what I went through, right? Because they now define it as burnout is a syndrome from chronic workplace stress that's not successfully managed. And a lot of the identified symptoms actually cross over with a lot of mental health, conditions, symptoms, but it's not a mental health issue. It's actually just a collection of symptoms. And if you catch these symptoms early enough and you can prevent it from snowballing, then you won't go into depression or you won't, have suicidal ideations. So that's where I had the idea that actually, burnout is actually something that I had experienced that resulted in me, trying different things, or resulted in me behaving in ways that people around me might not have understood at the time. And I also found that, I really had ability to share my story in a way that helped people see, have perspective on what they were going through and give them hope that there is something better. So, it was just actually natural progression that I got booked to speak. And how I actually connected with you was because some people from PSA actually saw me speak. And then they were actually encouraging me to join as a member. And people had mentioned, oh, there's another PSA member who's a dentist. It's David. And I realized that we were actually already connected somehow on LinkedIn or Facebook. So that's how I reached out. So I think the best ways to go about things in life is actually not to, strive in a way like you have a lot of expectations and you want to do perfectly and fulfill all the things that you want to do. It's actually, when people have a need and you see an opportunity, then being open to that opportunity and then seeing how it goes. So that's sort of how I live life now. So actually, my next project is going back to finish that book because I got so busy doing all the speaking that I actually never finished it. And initially, I was really cross with myself about that. And I sort of felt like I wanted to, take away from parts of my life and shut myself down and just write. But then I realized I was feeling a bit burnt out doing that. And meanwhile, I'm writing about burnout, right? So I actually had to give myself grace, which is actually the acronym I use to help people on how to think differently and change your mindset. And actually step back and be at peace that I may not finish that project right now, but I want to give my all to the opportunities that's in front of me currently. So this year, my aim is actually to finish that book. And the things that I usually share about in these talks about mindset or about the values that I have now that help me with overcoming burnout is actually the acronym GRACE. Which stands for gratitude. So being actually grateful for everything and everyone in your life, even the bad experiences in your life, or even people in the past that you might not associate with now, because they've actually all made you who you are. And R is for rest and recharge. So actually, doing what I did when I caught myself in early stages of burnout to actually learn how to rest. Not just sort of sleeping 7 or 8 hours a day rest, but finding things that fill your cup and actually how to recharge and when to say no and when to say yes. And then A is for acceptance, so actually accepting the things that you can't change, for example, things that have happened to you, but then having the courage to change what you can and having the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And then C is for compassion. So I used to be a person who actually was always about giving and serving and fulfilling other people's expectations on me. So I'm good at being a compassionate person to others, but not so good at being compassionate to myself and showing myself grace. So I think being compassionate on both sides is very important. And then E is for encouragement, to actually use your experiences to encourage others and to mentor and grow others, but also having people around you that encourage you. And that's why, I seek out different mentors or people have walked the path before me to actually, be encouraged by people's journey.
It's a great acronym, well. Grace. I love how you've been able to personalize it to yourself And of course, grace is your name, but grace is also a verb and an adjective as well. So it's very purposeful. Getting back to what you said about being able to accept that there is a grey area, and perfection is difficult, because in dentistry, it's very much, although we talk about X-rays being shades of grey, it's very much black and white. People either have decay or they don't. They need treatment or they don't, because nothing fixes itself in there. It just gets worse at whatever rate. And despite the fact that patients will tell you that they floss, when you ask them, they lie, because they will only answer truthful questions. So as a dentist, I used to ask my patients, do you floss 14 times a week? Because that was the only way of guaranteeing to know whether they were flossing twice a day. If you say twice a day, they go, yeah, kind of. And it's kind of like, well, what do you say then? Is it 1? Is it 2? So 14 is 14. That's a big number. And so you've got to tie them down on specifics. But the other thing about dentistry is that despite your good intentions as a dentist and your abilities and your skills to restore somebody to perfect caries-free mouths, it's very similar to the story of, the working class hero who wins the lotto, and 2 years later the money's all gone, spent, burnt, wasted, and they're back to where they started. Often you can do the same in the mouth. You can restore a mouth beautifully from what looks like a bomb hit it to perfection, but they still go out and think, well, now I've got these new teeth, I can eat what I want, I don't have to clean them, and the decay comes back. And they're happy for you to fix the decay. It's a really weird profession in terms of expecting perfection from your patients, but knowing that imperfection is deleterious to their health. And so with that in mind, that creates a thing in your mind as a dentist that you have to overcome and not transfer that back to your life and being so absolute, black and white. And so I think what you're doing is helping dentists to say it's okay outside of the mouth, outside of the office, or even in the office with your staff. Sometimes it's okay for them to make mistakes and to improve. You can't expect perfection from day one. So one of the things that you talk about is building resilience for yourself and building resilience from your staff and having a positive workplace environment. So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think what you touched on before, that's actually part of what I do when I did some workplace workshops with people. I actually talk about how to practice healthcare with care. That's one of my keynote topics. And I believe that healthcare is ultimately about caring. So caring for ourselves so that we are the best possible versions of ourselves. And then that will actually flow on into caring for your staff, and then helping your staff and your team to understand that everything you ultimately do is to care for the patient. So I think having that strong, like, why we do what we do and understanding the purpose of why we work is not to fulfill your ego and your perfectionism, but actually how to care for the patients. And I think people know don't know how much you know until they know how much you care. So patients actually do feel that as well. And I've found that over the years, I have been able to actually successfully, help people understand the importance of prevention and like help them to take ownership that, whatever they do at home is actually for their own good. It's not to tell me how well they've done, but ultimately it's for their own good. And you can see people change their mindset as well. I feel like a lot of my general practice is actually coaching patients as well and helping people, with their anxiety with dentistry. Sometimes I end up being the first person people tell when they go through a breakup or if they're in a difficult relationship, that sort of thing as well. But yeah, I think we can actually as a healthcare professional, care for a person holistically as well. So I think self-care is crucial, and then helping your team understand the purpose of why they do what they do, and then having the ability to communicate as a team and connect well is crucial as well. But you can't do that unless you yourself have insight on yourself and learn how to work on yourself
It's
first
an
as a leader.
interesting concept, and we mentioned this briefly before we came on air, and the fact that staff and maintaining a good, healthy work environment for your team is a really important part of owning a dental practice and working a dental practice, because it's 20% of your turnover should be paying your staff. It's your primary overhead, and it shouldn't be considered as an overhead. It should really be considered as an asset, not a liability. Overheads are considered liabilities on balance sheets, but your team is actually an asset. So when I meet a dentist who's had the same team, highly motivated for 20 or 30 years, I think that's really great. But I can also meet a dentist who's had the same team for 20 or 30 years, and they're bleeding him dry with inactivity, lack of inspiration, and always finding mistakes to bring the practice down to their level rather than bring their level up to the aspirations of the practice. It's a seesaw. Ultimately, at the end of that workplace environment is that the customer suffers if the workplace environment is not balanced. If you've got people frustrated in their job, they get frustrated with their customers for no reason. If you've got people underperforming, then the customers also don't get given the care that they should. Ultimately, what we are delivering, and you mentioned it, is we're delivering health. And, we've got to remember that as practitioners and as employees, that everything that we're recommending for the patient is for them to have better health, be able to eat better, have less bacteria in their body. The now of it is that the mouth is not just a part that you just put into the body. It's actually a window to the rest of the body. And in fact, it's not just an indicator of what's going on in the body. There is things that happen in the mouth, that in that blood, that then pump that blood through your healthy heart, healthy lungs, healthy brain with pathogens that are inside the mouth. So science is also now developing this knowledge. Are we having difficulty in dentistry, and is this an economic thing because of general low unemployment, that we're now having difficulty getting good people to work in dentistry? Are you finding that in terms of being one of the contributors to workplace stress, and the environment is, well, let's just take anybody who can fog a mirror because that's all I can get in dentistry as a staff member? How's that? How are you seeing that in dental practice?
I think, yeah, definitely. I don't think it's just in dental practice, but in general, since COVID, I think a lot of businesses find it hard to actually retain good people and be able to find the right people. But I do find the workplaces that I've been blessed to work with, they're open to taking people who aren't experienced and then training them in order to provide the right care. But yeah, it's definitely a big challenge for any practice owner, and I've seen this in lots of places, to actually recruit the right people and then retain them. And that's why I think it's so important for dentists to actually consider workplace culture, or how they're showing up as leaders of the team, not just because we can become very tunnel vision in our own work as well. And I think I've been guilty of that definitely in the past as well, where, you're just trying to get this thing perfect and work on time. And we're under so much stress that we actually neglect to include our staff or help them understand why sometimes we might be in a rush, or, speak sternly because we're trying to achieve the best outcome for the patient. So I think communication as a team is very important, and actually helping the staff actually understand that. I know one of the practices that I did a workshop in, one of the front desk staff, they weren't from a healthcare background at all. They were working in mechanics before they came to the dental practice. So they didn't actually know, why it's important, like why their role is so valuable, and why being on the front desk is actually a crucial part of the patient experience. So I think actually doing that workshop helped her understand and see, oh, healthcare is actually a different, game, and like they actually play such a crucial role to how the patient perceives the practice, or the aftercare of the patient after they leave the room, and the importance of communicating on the phone. So yeah, I think it's important to actually help your team understand that, and not assume that everyone has the same intentions or the same knowledge.
You've raised a really good point there, that it's there are people out there who have the qualities that we look for in our team, but they're not in dental, and they often end up being really good employees given an opportunity to learn a new craft, a new trade, and apply their personality to the customer service that's required. And I often see it with one of my clients. She only hires non-dental people to be her dental assistants and receptionists. And one comment is, I never thought dentistry was going to be so interesting. I'm so glad I've taken this job. They've come from working at Dan Murphy's, or working at Coles or Bunnings or Woolworths. And so dentistry gives them actually more people interaction than just, where do I find the baked beans, or where do I find the wheelbarrows?
Yeah, and that's right. I think I've worked in practices where I was training, new staff a lot, and I actually used to say this, I can teach a monkey how to hold a suction, but you can't teach people how to care. So actually, when you're employing someone, I think it's more important to look at, the person's attitude and their caring nature, and whether they have the right idea about infection control, in their natural environment, than actually having someone with experience, because you can't change a person's heart or the way that they care. Or I mean, you can inspire them and help them understand, but I feel like the personality is more important actually than
well, I think it's something I learnt from one of the CEOs at Ritz-Carlton, and he said that if he was starting another business, first thing he would do would be create his vision statement for the business, and then he would be able to tell people what that vision statement is rather than have to read it. And then once he knew what it was, he then would interview on finding people who shared that same vision. And only then would he then train them on the skills that were needed. So you can't say, here are the skills, but if they don't share the vision, they're not the right person, and so we see it with sporting teams. Some people switch around sporting teams because they're going for the pay. They don't have the vision of the team winning. Others would prefer to stay with a team and work with that team and lift everybody to, a premiership or a championship. And so sometimes the principles that we see in teamwork in a sporting team is good to bring to our business. But even in sporting teams,
100%,
that this, I think this happened in COVID, when in rugby league, when it all had to relocate to Queensland, sporting teams still have factions and splits within them. And so if a team is split between I like him and I don't like him, and it's two factions, that team is still not a united team. And that's a difficult thing. So again, in a small environment in dentistry, a team might be a dental assistant, a receptionist, and a dentist, and then a hygienist, and then another dental assistant. And so it's very small numbers. We all have to get on. How do you work with teams in that, in terms of keeping that balance and focusing on the ultimate goal, that a business that's successful is far more fun to work in than a business that is struggling?
Yeah, I think when I did the team trainings, we talk about like common goals. So actually, like me coming in as an external person, that's sometimes helpful rather than just the boss telling their team that. But actually, talking about it together, and as you said, like mission and vision is so important. But some practices don't need a vision or mission statement, but they need to actually understand healthcare and the aim of that, and the goal is for the patient's good. And then learning how to communicate and conflict resolution in healthy ways. I think a lot of people sometimes get too busy to actually spend time getting to know their staff, or beyond just telling them to work. You actually need to connect with them and get to know them, and show that you care about them as a whole human as well. I think that's really important. And then, finding time to actually spend time to connect with each other. And then in day to day, actually showing gratitude. So I actually have a downloadable on my website, drgraceshah.com, on the 5 love languages of workplace, like things that you could do that takes from that book, The 5 Love Languages, which is about relationships, with your partner. But also, I think you could use that in relationships with other people as well, to make sure that they feel cared for and you're filling their cup, or even just reminding yourself of small gestures, so that you can show appreciation to your team, and so that they feel valued. Even small things like when you're, bringing a patient in, actually introducing your nurse, so that they feel like they're a valued part of the team as well, and
Yeah,
that they're
very,
caring
very
for the patient
important
too.
that the team is included, because
Mm.
we all know as dentists that as soon as we leave the room, the patient's going to turn to the dental assistant and either say, "What's he doing?" or "Do I really need this?" And so again, elevating the dental assistant to being somebody who has the same knowledge, they just can't drill teeth, is very, very powerful in a practice,
Mm.
because the patient then understands that this person has the smarts, and that this person also has the trust of the
Mm.
dentist to speak the dentist's thoughts and to speak honestly about what's needed and support.
I think that's why when I give lectures, I always talk about the importance of people actually caring and being ethical about what they do, and yeah, being not just saying that you care, but actually genuinely giving the best options, and doing what you would do for yourself, for the patient, and also working on your technical expertise and scope of practice as well, and thinking
Let's
about
get
what
back
you
to
offer. Yeah.
the burning question, burnout prevention. How do dentists
Hmm.
see the warning signs, and what can they do in the first instance in terms of feeling burnt out? How can they take some action? And in the second instance of feeling like they're on the slippery slope and they're past the point of no return, who do they then turn to in terms of that as well? How can they avoid the pathway that you ended up on, sadly?
Mm. Yeah. So I think um, the warning signs that early symptoms of burnout is actually by the WHO's definition is exhaustion, energy depletion, like feeling tired and fatigued and drained even after you've had enough sleep, and being inefficient or inefficacy, professional inefficacy. So reduced in professionalism, loss of motivation, lacking concentration, and then cynicism, which includes like negativity, frustration, withdrawal. So three aspects. But these are things that when you pick up early, then you need to think about how can I work on resting and recharging? How can I, uh, uh, work out my work life harmony better, so that you don't end up having more and more symptoms or letting it affect other parts of your life, because that can have a lot of consequences, obviously. So yeah, that's usually uh, you know and acknowledging that. I think first, like identifying and acknowledging it, and then being willing to make changes that are within your control, because a lot of times people will say, oh, but I can't do this, or I can't work part-time, or I can't take a break. But sometimes it's is it you can't or you won't, because I think a lot of things are now controlled. So actually knowing what you can and can't control and taking ownership of the parts that you can make a change in. And then, sorry, I think the second part you asked was when you actually feel like it's getting to a point where you can't, help yourself. I think if it was early, then you can find a coach and people to keep you accountable, or, a friend. That's what I do in my one-on-one coaching, to walk alongside people and keep them accountable and ask them questions or help them think of a different perspective. But when it gets to a point where you're, in depression, or, you have more severe symptoms, then definitely getting counseling and seeing a mental health professional is important as well. So I just get that.
Really good point, Grace, in terms of being able to reach out to someone, because there is always a solution. And sometimes the decisions that, or sometimes the conditions that we end up with are a result of not getting the right information or all the information in making a choice. As older, Grace, you mentioned your website. Can you tell us again how people find you and what they need to do once they're on your website in terms of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is drgracesha.com, so drgracesha.com. So on there, you can actually book a call with me, or you can send me a message and I'll reach out as well. I'm also on all the socials, but I'm most active on Facebook and LinkedIn. So a lot of dentists actually reach out to me that way and send a message. And I'm very easy to find if you Google. Also,
all right, and you're speaking at the Australian Dental Association Congress in Perth as well, I understand.
Yeah, I'm speaking at 2 sessions there in May in Perth. So the Australian Dental Congress, ADC, I think that's what the website is, and that's open for registration as well, where I'll be sharing about how to self-care and care for your teeth.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Well, Grace, thanks so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Great to catch up. And I definitely see that you are filling a need in dentistry that people have kind of brushed over in the past. And really, this is a subject that looking after our workforce and ourselves is really, really important. Dr. Grace Shah, thank you so much for sharing your story. Very, very interesting story, very touching story. Congratulations on your success, your personal success, and congratulations on your professional success and future successes. I can only see an upward pathway for you. So thank you again for being a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast.
Thanks very much for having
me. No, my pleasure, Grace. Thank you.
Me, David. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favourite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.